The problem with anticipation is that expectations are almost unnaturally high, and never was that more true than with the new MacBook Pro. Apple's flagship notebook was long overdue a refresh, but reception has been mixed. Instead of full touch, there's a new and contentious touch bar interface. Almost all of the old familiar ports have been ditched, and if you want the whizziest of the whiz-bang features, it doesn't come cheap. The 13-inch MacBook Pro starts at $1,499. That model, though, has physical function keys. If you want the touch bar, you need to step up to the next $1,799 version. It's probably worth it, however. As well as the touch bar, you add a faster processor and 2 extra Thunderbolt 3 ports. An Intel Core i5 is standard on both versions, but you can upgrade to a Core i7, switch the 8GB of memory to 16GB, and get up to 1TB of SSD storage. The 15-inch MacBook Pro starts at $2,399 and comes with a touch bar, 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and Intel's Core i7 as standard. Unlike the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which makes do with integrated Intel graphics, the larger version has both Intel and AMD Radeon graphics. While Intel is rolling out its 7th generation Core processors, the new MacBook Pro actually uses the 6th generation. That's because the versions of the new chips Apple needs won't be shipping until next year. As a result, in benchmarks at least, processor performance doesn't show a vast improvement over the old MacBook Pro. The bigger change is in the graphics, where both the Intel and AMD silicon is faster than before. You notice it in graphics rendering and 4K processing. Both the 13 and 15-inch notebooks have Apple's latest Retina display, but while the resolution is the same as before, each screen supports the DCI-P3 color space. Colors and contrast are both improved, though it's most visible with greens and reds, and you'll need images from a P3 compatible camera to get the benefit. Luckily, the iPhone 7 supports P3 capture too. Maybe more usefully, screen brightness has been improved. It's now 500 nits rather than 300, which helps visibility outdoors and in direct sunlight. Apple wasn't let off lightly for dumping almost all of the legacy ports and switching to Thunderbolt 3. Aside from the headphone jack, none of the USB, HDMI or other ports you're familiar with are present. That means dongles and adapters are almost essential, since Apple's vision of a wireless or high-speed Thunderbolt 3 world still quite isn't here. The theory seems to be that, if it hasn't embraced the new port so wholeheartedly, third-party peripherals and accessories would have been slower coming. That makes sense, but it seems miserly not to include at least one adapter in the box. Still, Thunderbolt 3 has big advantages. With the right accessory, you get power, data and display over the same cable. Of course, the screen everyone is really interested in is the touchscreen Apple has added. Rather than follow the lead of Windows 10 and make the primary display finger-friendly, not to mention run the risk of eating into iPad revenues, Apple has introduced the touch bar. It's a long, narrow, touch-sensitive strip that runs across the top of the keyboard where the physical function keys used to go. You still get the old volume, brightness, media and other buttons, but since they're now virtual, they can be replaced with controls more useful to whatever app you're using. In Mail, for instance, you get a send message button, suggestions for email recipients, and text formatting control. In Photos, you can navigate through images with tiny thumbnails on the touch bar, or make adjustments without having to cover any part of the primary display with toolbars. Most of the time, the contents of the touch bar can be customized. Apple is opening it up to third-party software developers too, although only a small handful will be available at the MacBook Pro's launch. More, including Microsoft Office and Photoshop, will follow on in the coming months. It's fair to say the touch bar takes some getting used to. If you're a long-time macOS user, you'll probably find the keyboard shortcuts do a lot of what the touch bar offers. Unfortunately, you can't pin automator macros there for more complex tasks, and neither can web apps have their own touch bar controls. Given time, though, there's a lot of potential, especially in tandem with the oversized trackpad. The touch bar really needs broader third-party developer support in order to shine. At the far right of it is the new Touch ID button. Tap your finger on it and you can log into macOS without having to type your password. It'll also allow multiple people to switch between their accounts, though only 5 fingerprints at most can be registered. It's very fast and easy. If you use Apple Pay and have your credit card stored on your Mac, Touch ID can be used to approve payments. Just as on the iPhone, your actual card details are saved in a secure chip and don't get communicated directly with whatever store you're using. As with the Touch Bar, there's an API for developers to integrate their own software with Touch ID. If you've used Apple's 12-inch MacBook, you'll probably recognize the distinctive low-profile keys on the new MacBook Pro. The so-called butterfly hinge has been revamped though, and though travel isn't any greater and is still very shallow for a laptop, each key feels snappier and more tactile than with the first generation. Touch typists may still complain at first, but it doesn't take long before you're back up to speed. In fact, Apple's old-style keyboard quickly feels wobbly and loose. One of the benefits of the butterfly hinge is increased stability over the whole keycap. Has Apple forgotten that the Pro in MacBook Pro stands for professionals? I'm not entirely sure that's true, though I can understand the complaints from those who prefer maximum performance and don't care if their laptop has to be a little thicker and heavier to accommodate it. The reality, though, is that the modern professional isn't what he or she used to be. Apple's target audience has widened, and so the new MacBook Pro has to be more things to more people. Overall, the tight integration of hardware and macOS leave the performance experience feeling more than the sum of its parts. The more innovative features, like the Touch Bar and Thunderbolt 3, need time to mature, however. That's par for the course at the cutting edge, though Apple may have to put up with some vocal complaints while the rest of the industry catches up.